Hello, good evening, and welcome to another WEBSTER report on this, the 10th of August 2025. And that's the 8th month of the year already, 2025 flying past. We're now being told about, I'm probably getting this wrong, but it's some COVID virus that's now possibly spreading across borders from China. The main question is, are we going to fall for this again? Are people going to double down on this? Has it woken too many people up? Are we seeing a propagated plan of action to cause civil unrest, where we have police bussing in agitators and provocateurs to interact with protests, bearing in mind that a protest is a legal acceptance, because you have to apply for things and stuff like that. It's not a rejection. It's a bit like asking for an inquiry. We don't want inquiries, we want investigations. So we've got a lot of things that have happened this week with, well, various things really, with just some of the stuff that we've got going on. In fact, if I can just bring up, let's see if this works anyway. I might be able to get this working. Do you want to jump in at this point, Alex, and see what you've got to bring into this? Because I know we touched on some of this through the week, mate, but to see what's happening with people all around the country now going on these marches, and it's inevitably being weighed up as a racist thing already. You know, I've had Muslim friends of mine who are thinking that these people are just looking for violence and they're all racist. No, that's what the media is going to portray that. And unfortunately, the media are going to look for the people who can't articulate this this battle that's going on, because, you know, there's towns that are being overrun, Alex. This isn't about racism. This is about life and culture of a country that is being flooded away. What's your input on that?
Well, it's interesting, eh? You remember Groundhog Day? It's a great movie, that. Bill Murray, one of the best comedic actors of all time.
Yeah.
He keeps waking up, doesn't he? And every day it's the same day. Punxsutawney Phil and Groundhog Day, and he can't escape this blizzard. It's a brilliant film. It's really profound. It must be difficult, though. I mean, what he did in the end. I mean, it's a really interesting movie, because in the end, what he did, he had to adapt. And he had to adapt because he just couldn't come to terms at first with the fact that it was the same thing over and over and over again. And he was relatively powerless, and it took him a while, and he explored it really well. The bottom line was, he was quite a cynical character at first, but that's what was part of the charm, because cynicism was quite close to realism. But realism can go over the edge when there's nothing to look forward to, you know, when it's a constant blizzard, constant attrition, like we see now. It wears you down. So to be able to turn that into a positive, which, of course, if people haven't watched the film, I won't do any plot spoilers. I can't believe anyone won't have heard of it, certainly. Possibly not seen it. If not, watch it. But, yeah, we get ground down. To maintain a sense of humour is particularly difficult, or a positive outlook at least. So we're pulled with this every week, and it's hard to know what to say that's any different, because it's a case of here we are again. It's more of the same. The things they do to us. Now, the point about this, I think, is that you might consider it random. So when we talk about lawlessness and the spirit of lawlessness from a Christian perspective, we might have a picture of like demons frolicking around, creating mischief and havoc, that they've been given a time to have a bit of a free-for-all. That's one way of looking at it. But I suppose as well, you've just got to look at these human actors behind the scenes, these dark, shadowy figures, and they've got an agenda, whether we call it evil or not, but certainly about creating chaos. And the thing about chaos is, when you get it wall to wall and you watch media, which I tend to not bother with now, what it does, it disorientates you. Now, if you see somebody who you want to have the victory over, you try and discombobulate them, you try and disorientate them. You try and confuse them so much, or conflicting messages. I mean, it's even like with the weather. The weather forecast steadily year on year, they were getting better meteorological predictions. And now it's almost like the mockeries in the weather. Yeah, there's going to be like a 6-foot snow drifts from the north of Scotland right down to Land's End. And it's just like a shock tactic. And they don't even bother. They just say, oh, yeah, it's going to be this. It's going to be a massive tsunami that's going to wipe out the whole of Europe. And people don't bat an eyelid. And when it doesn't happen, they kind of go, oh, that's interesting. And I think what that's part of is a desensitization process, because once you can't take cues from anywhere, if they exaggerate everything and you don't know what's what you can claim is they're actually making the news redundant. And I think since mainstream media lost its credibility, they've kind of done a suicide act on themselves. Like, well, we're just going to blow it up completely. We're going to turn it into complete insanity so that it's completely confusing. So again, it's like, oh, yeah, there's another pandemic. Oh, something else has cropped up in China. There's another virus. And it's not even about whether that's going to happen. It's baiting it for us to say, oh dear. Or then, oh, no, it's not going to happen. Oh, is it? And it all it is deranging people's wiring, because when you're discombobulated, it's the same as when you're drunk. You can't see straight. You won't be able to drive your car straight. And that puts you at a massive disadvantage. So to me, if you look at how it's been scaled up in recent months, I mean, certainly since COVID, it's just been increasing its speed. It's just designed to totally disorientate people. And that's what it does. So, of course, the antidote to that is you've got to have good filters, because there's very little that's actually got any value in the content. Very, very little. I mean, I commented earlier because I like to troll Jeremy Corbyn, and I like Bernie Sanders in America. And he's come on with a post on Facebook that I never asked to see. And he's talking about this horrendous treatment of the people protesting about Palestine in this country. And I just, like I said the other week, I just gave it to him straight. You get some people coming on with the high emojis by calling out and say, well, what are you doing? What are these people doing? What are you doing? You're a failed politician. You sold out on Brexit. You're a traitor. And now you're encouraging the people of this country to protest about things happening thousands of miles away. Where's your moral backbone? You're an MP in Parliament. You're supposed to be there for your constituents. So why are you going on about something that's got no relevance, particularly at the time that we've got what we've got going on, over here? And of course, the moralizers and the virtue signalers, they don't want somebody like me saying that like it is, because they'll accuse you of being immoral or not caring. And it's got nothing to do with that. We can't afford to be concerned about things that are going on, thousands of miles away, in priority over the things that are happening in this country. So, to me, it's pretty obvious. It's all a distraction, and there's very little content worth following.
Well, I think that's where this mix match is now, because I'll just play this clip. We've seen what's happened with this migration replacement stuff, and Labour said that they've got these plans to send anybody back, but they can't be nailed down on it and when it's going to be implemented, because they want to make sure it's legal. So when you're asked the question, well, is it legal? They're saying, well, I can't answer that. So this is the usual stuff that we're getting. But then remember, we were talking about how Joe Biden, who couldn't run a bath, drove a country unbeknownst to him into the ground, which is obviously done on purpose, which, it opened the way for Donald Trump to come riding in and say, this is going to be the new golden age. I'm going to fix all this by doing that. I believe he's just broken another peace deal between Azerbaijan and somebody else. So, there's all these good things. Now, we've had Reform who were saying all the similar things, what they were going to do about the immigration stuff and things like that. But there's a couple of interesting videos here, pal. So let's just see if I can get them working, and then let me know what your thoughts are.
There was a fancy dinner for Reform a few months ago. Before, whilst I was in jail, I knew someone I was talking to. There's 25,000 pounds. Do you know that head table Reform deal in nice France? Actually, started with. So I'm sorry, but didn't they just take £1 million just take for a well-defined forum Muslim? Yeah? It's like you can't flip-flop for arch. It changes on everything. For me, your party don't believe in free speech. You don't believe in democracy. So people are saying, yeah, but we need reform. Reform are filling themselves with all sorts. Net zero, pro-net zero people, pro-net zero politicians, Remainers, left-wingers, Labour, Liberal, the council. It's just the same bullshit. It's not. The country's ready for political revolution to get rid of these absolute traitors in Parliament, and you're filling your whole party with the same traitors that were in Parliament. Well, he actually told the States the other day, like France.
Hey, oh, looks like he's gone. That's unusual. He's up at the van. So you got my ugly mug. Hope he'll be back. I had some tech difficulties before I came on this evening. I was struggling. I had to come off my laptop and go on my phone here. So Paul's been booted. It could have been because he's been trying to stream that video, and I couldn't make I don't know if other people could make head or tail of what Tommy Robinson was saying. I picked up a few words here and there, but beyond that, I thought, oh, he's just the video's ended, and I'm now going to be able to make a few comments. I won't be able to make comments. I'll have to ask Paul to clarify what on earth Tommy Robinson said. So I don't really know what he was driving at. But Tommy, bless him, I'd be interested to see what people think of Tommy Robinson, because some people think he's a shill. He's paid opposition. He's Stephen Yaxley Lennon, and everyone's got a theory on every public voice that appears. And he's one of these controversial ones. They keep banging him up and arresting him, and you kind of wonder, is he actually in a luxury cell? Is it just part of the soap opera that we're dealing with? And it's not the easiest thing to establish. Here we are. We've got Paul back, or have we? Beth calling Heysham Power Station. Come in.
Can you hear me?
No.
Good. How much of that did you get, mate? How much of that did you get before I got booted?
I was just monologuing to everyone, looking at an image of myself on the screen, having a chat with myself with people overhearing it, and I was just saying to people that it were breaking up quite a bit. So I only picked up a few little bits. So you might have to do kind of a paraphrase of what he was saying.
Well, let's just give this another go, because it's quite interesting what's been said.
You know, Reform a few months ago, whilst I was in jail, I knew someone, a businessman I was talking to, that was going to that. There's £25,000. Do you know the whole head table of Reform's meal with Nigel Farage, Pakistani Muslims? So I'm sorry, but didn't they just take £1 million yesterday from a World Economic Forum Muslim? Yeah? It's like you can't, Nigel, flip-flop for arch. It changes on everything. For me, your party don't believe in free speech. You don't believe in democracy. So when people are saying, yeah, but we need reform. Reform are filling themselves with all the ex-Tories, net zero, pro-net zero people, pro-net zero politicians, Remainers, left-wingers, Labour, Liberal, they're filling all the council. It's just the same bullshit. It's like the country's ready for political revolution to get rid of these absolute traitors in Parliament, and you're filling your whole party with the same traitors that were in Parliament.
Well, he actually told the New Statesman the other day, like France this is, that he wants Reform UK to be to the left of the Conservative Party on immigration by the next election. I saw it. I've seen it all. But
Reform voters don't want to hear this. And Reform members don't want to hear this. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. There was a fact.
So what's your opinions on that?
Okay, it's interesting. I would need to see a little bit up to. Right, so GB News, they're an interesting platform, so I'd probably be looking at that. I would like to see, or be in a position to acquire some of the background from the interviewer, because I'd be interested to see what stance a broadcaster takes, like credible journalism. So Tommy calls himself a journalist, and he did do the panorama expose. So that was quite interesting. So I think he's done some interesting, let's call it work. So I'm not saying he's the type of journalist who people might normally recognize to be journalists, but we might call ourselves citizen journalists, and he might be put into that category. The problem really is with Farage and anybody else, unless you're Trump, and maybe that's to do not just with Trump, but the American political system. In this country, it's harder than in America. It really is. They've got it tied up a lot more. So if you want to be a dissenting voice, it's always got to be within certain parameters. So Farage is playing the game, because if he didn't play the game, they would cancel him. They're already trying to cancel him. So I don't think it tells us anything about the sincerity or otherwise of Farage. Somebody more radical like Tommy isn't somebody who's in a position to get seats in Parliament. Tommy Robinson has no voice in the House of Commons. And we might think that that's a good thing, because who would want to be in that den of vipers? But Andrew Bridgen was in there. He's been in there. He gleaned a lot of experience. And people could say, well, I don't trust Bridgen. He had some dodgy connections. So you can continue that game all you like, really. We can't verify it. But Bridgen was in there. He made some contributions. I remember him doing the expose on the vaccine speech, asking for close retention. Of course, all the MPs just walked out, so they didn't attend. So he was mainly speaking to an empty gallery. But it was televised. So, in a sense, to get even a seat in Parliament, okay, so you're representing your constituents purportedly, but we all know that's not really true. People don't really vote for the constituents at the general election. They vote for what party they want to be in power. So you don't have that much clout. Now, if you're somebody like Farage with a small number of seats, but a landslide possibility of a swing because of everyone being so utterly demoralised, then of course he has to mind his P's and Q's, because they're already looking for anything that he might do that they can nail on him. Early doors, when he got those, 5 seats, he said a couple of things about the Southport incident. And some people were talking about, maybe imprisonment, or he committed an offence. Was he going to be investigated by the police? So these controllers, they will use any means, fair or foul, to stop Farage. Now, if they stop Farage, they stop reform. If they stop reform, they stop, 30% of the voting populace expressing their voice of dissatisfaction about what's going on in the country. So it's not, Farage isn't just expressing a set of opinions. He is embodying a cause, no matter what you think of him. So if you took him out of the picture because he said something ill-advised, then basically a lot of people now pinning their hopes on some reform, some change, would become crestfallen. So I don't think there's an objective position about Farage or Robinson. I think it's complicated and very, very difficult to know what to do. Like truth as a pure thing should be wonderful. We should all celebrate it. We should all demand truth. But truth comes at a cost, as we saw with Jesus Christ. That's why when he was on trial, he didn't say anything. Because words will be manipulated and construed in a certain way. And sometimes silence is the best path. He wasn't seeking political power. He wasn't seeking to bring in a rival political regime, establishment. He wasn't seeking to overthrow the Romans in the classical sense that the Jews wanted the Messiah to do. So there was nothing to say. So when you're operating in this world, if you're thinking about worldly change, we've got worldly instruments, worldly apparatus that we use. People vote. Some people don't vote and say don't, or they say you should use a vote. It's a waste of vote. And it's largely all distraction. Whichever way you jump, there's no objective right or wrong. There's truth on the other sides. So it's not that easy, I think.
Well, it seems to me that the Conservative and Labour have set all this up in place and are fanning the flames by looking incompetent. I mean, I hate it when people use the word that Keir Starmer's incompetent. He's doing the job that he was put there to do. He's not incompetent about anything. This is all as it's meant to be. But if Farage is going to be this knight in shining armour again, the opposite of what Trump is, and we're now looking at the likes of, Sadiq Khan's being attacked as an invader, never mind anything else, because of what he's promoting and how he's ignoring, that children are actually getting trafficked and raped and abused, and he's willing to sit there and say, I'm not sure what the question is. It's quite infuriating. So it gets to people in the end, and that's why people now feel they've got to come out and have the voice heard. But again, you've got the police that are arresting people for having a Union Jack flag, whilst other foreign flags are being flown in their own country. So they're putting, I hate to use the word patriots, against other people. So then it becomes a race thing, Alex. And then all of a sudden there's going to be an answer. And is this going to be digital ID? Is this going to be a step in the door where cash goes? Because then we're going to see a completely different fight. It's good. The battle will change absolutely. Then, just to add to the stuff that's again what's been we're just talking about. If this one will play.
But you know what? I'll go and check it out for myself and see if it's working or not. So I've got a little fishing boat, skippered by a guy from Dover called Matt. Went on the channel yesterday morning at 7 a.m. We motored over to Calais and pretty quickly found 2 boats stuffed full of migrants crossing the channel. I think the number you suggested is probably about right. It looked like there were 70 or 80 on each of those boats. So there'd be no deterrent effect whatsoever. Those 150 odd illegal immigrants have not been deterred because I guess they knew that their chances of getting returned under Labour's deal are virtually zero. We also saw the 2 French warships escorting those boats out of the shallow French waters near the coast, where they could and should have stopped them, like the Belgians do, but instead they escorted them into the shipping lanes. I saw a massive tanker having to, shipping container tanker, having to change course to avoid hitting the migrant boat, and then Border Force came and picked them up in the middle of the channel, just on the borderline between French and UK waters, and ferried them to Dover. And then the French captain, I called them on the radio, the ship radio, having the cheek to say, can you please give us all the life jackets back so we can use them in the future for other illegal migrants. So the whole thing was completely shambolic. Thought,
So now they don't even have to come up all the way over, Alex. They can just come halfway and we'll meet them and pick them up.
Yeah. I'm not surprised, but it's just triggering. I mean, it's very hard to know. I mean, from my perspective, I mean, it'd be interesting. I would be interested to do a straw poll of people. I don't know how many people are watching. A few people commenting in the chat. But I'll be checking in with the central nervous system. How they feel about these developments. Do people feel relatively powerless, or do they feel relatively calm? Like, I can only say from my point of view, I just feel completely unperturbed. It's going to be interesting, I think, in this second half of the year. Well, actually, now how long we got left? less than 5 months. It's going to be
We're 8
interesting.
months now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting leading up to Christmas. You know what happens. But yeah, for me, it's just a case of being patient and not losing your head, because these stories are just going to come one after the other. Lots of different stories trying to whip up agitation. If people allow themselves to get agitated, we're playing into the hands of these clowns. I mean, I got past the stage. A long time I used to despise them. I used to despise what they're doing, and now I just see it as something that's unfolding. It's panning out according to a script. And like I said about Groundhog Day, we've got to try and retain a positive, you know, and ultimately, you know, for me, the best, it's like having an immune system. It's to have a positive structure in your life and build, you know, build with people, build with positive people. And from a Christian point of view, it's you know, it's building with church communities. If those church communities are not sold out, I mean, you know, we had a good experience over the last few days up at the van. We went to the house group in Heysham, and it's interesting that when you get people of like mind, the divide and conquer doesn't work quite the same. You only need a relatively small community. I think people, I don't know, it's a bit like a life raft, really. And we talked about remnants as well. The Bible study was about Sodom and Gomorrah. But it seemed as if, really, that the theme that's coming out is that there's always a faithful remnant, and they've got to stick together. I don't see what else there is, really, because nation states are being dismantled. I mean, America is different, and obviously when Taylor comes in, we'll hear his perspective again. It does seem as if, regardless of any reservations we might have about Trump, he's not Farage. It's a different cell. And he really is delivering change in America. And so they're at a different position, because unless there's some like deeper plot that's going to unfold with a twist, which we know is possible, he's at least putting some of these things right that have been chronically happening domestically. And at least at the face value, that's got to be preferable. It's got to be preferable to what we see happening where in these kind of situations in Europe and over here, where, I mean, it's just a free-for-all. And you look at your country and you think, well, do I have pride in my country? And if I do, on what basis? I mean, what is it to be British? Well, I think all these questions are massive. And in the midst of it all, we need resilience, and you know, people have got to come together, but not necessarily in acts of violence. And if you've not got anything gluing you together of a spiritual nature, it is gonna basically bubble over into violent incidents, which will play into the hands of the oppressors.
Well, it's interesting because the shift over here now, especially when you find out that the government was using taxpayer money to fund Afghanistan. Afghanistan's over here straight after the war was finished. Now, if they are bringing, basically the people who they're helping was like basically Afghani army or defectors or something that were working for the English. So we've got a belief system that's coming over here. These people go into communities just like we do. You know, if there's a community where there's family of Scousers that move to the area, we'll try and get together. Same with Manx. It's congregations. In towns, you always end up with your own people. In Lee, you had a community of people that were separated by estates. So you had communities within communities, but you had a culture. With diversity, we've got all these different cultures that we all accept, but then for some reason, the people who've lived here and grown up here over generations, their culture now is saying, no, you can't do that. And that causes agitation. And that agitation is being propagated on purpose. So if we can't see that, if people can't then see that the money that's being used is being generated through legalized fraud of people being taught how to act certain ways, all these generations, Alex, you can't see the trouble that you're in. You can't see the doors of the trap that's right in front of you. Never mind the trap that's going to drag you into a trap, into a trap, into a trap. So we've got to, at some point, we've got to be able to join all this stuff up and articulate it. The fact that they committed genocide through democide in this country, killing elderly, killing ordinary people now because of blood clots. Oh my word, you know, you get sick of keep repeating all the same things. You find people who have had 3 injections and now from training to do a physical job, they're now in a mobility scooter having epileptic fits, and yet those epileptic that even though they're having the symptoms of epilepsy, the doctors diagnose them as having non-epileptic syndrome, even though they're having epileptic fits. So they can't give them epilepsy medicine because it's not epilepsy. So the baffled me that it's this common denominator. So they've got all this. It's basically witchcraft. All these spells that are going on everywhere that are dragging everybody to all these places. You've got people who are losing people left, right, and centre within a space of months through turbo cancers. Oh, we don't know what's going on. So you've got all this division, you've got all this race, you've got the monetary side of it as well, and then you've got all this finger pointing. So everybody's arguing with each other, but don't worry, as somebody in the chat room said, Premiership's just started. You know, we've got to be able to get these dots joined and get people talking about it before it's provoked into people where they just turn up with pitchforks, because they're prepared for that. You know, the legislation that will pass, Alex, it will, you know, you being a domestic terrorist for carrying a pitchfork to Westminster and trying to pull everybody out there and have have public hangings for treason and all that. The fact that you want to do that will pass legislation that means it could apply to me and you just chatting on the street corner about football if we've stood there too long. So we've got to be careful of how this plays out. And we have got history to show us how this has happened before, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've got to come back to a theological position because it makes sense of it all. So, like, we understand that Satan is anti-God, he's the adversary. Therefore, he's anti-God's good creation, which is all based on order. So Satan is a merchant of chaos. He hates God. He hates God's creation, of which we human beings are a part. He hates human beings, which means he's anti-life. So you would expect him to build up a death cult. Now, obviously, that's waging war against human life. And when you see turbo cancers and also for the vaccines and people fell for because of lack of awareness, they were asleep. What it should do is force us to evaluate the value of a human life. Usually when you have, like when it's a story and it's shocking, there's millions of people dying, you can go, well, at least I wasn't dumb enough to take it. And in a way, you can still be ineffective and just be a casual bystander. But once it starts to affect people close to you, so, a little bit closer to home. But the question is still the same.
Yep.
Just because it impacts you or me, it doesn't change the question. The question is objectively, what is the value of human life? Who would hate human life so much as to want to destroy it? Now, we can look at human operators who sponsor war, like bankers for personal profit and gain, and say it's just humans who are selfish and greedy. And you can analyze it on that level. And you can even call them psychopathic. So you can analyze it on that level, and I'm sure a lot of that's true. But who are the operators behind the scenes? Well, it's spiritual forces, but the question then is still not, oh, well, we've got the truth, actually, it's spiritual forces. It's, what does that mean? If people are dying and they're atheists, They only believe they've got this one life. So if you have it taken away from you, you've had everything taken away from you. Well, why would that not be of a massive concern? Why are people so docile that it's just another statistic? So if we aren't valuing, if we're not passionately valuing every single human life, then what are we doing? And to me, you're alive yourself, and that means you want to continue living. So it's logical that you wouldn't want to die. So why does that not raise people? Why does that not get them asking deeper questions? And it's very, very difficult for me. It's unfathomable. Like, I just don't get why people are so dopey and docile. They just don't seem to notice.
Slowly but surely, they've dragged us into a massive depression where mental health is off the scales. The so-called remedies for this mental health causes more problems. I mean, when you're psychotic and you are put on antipsychotic drugs that has a side effect of causing psychotic episodes, we see, you know, it's like, Houston, I think we might have a problem here. So if the healthcare system isn't anything to do with caring about health, but it's about sustainable development and all this other crap, and then we're passing public policies for climate change that is just an ordinary climate change. I mean, you could never say that man has never affected climate, but for the percentage of carbon dioxide that they want to get rid of, which is but they've changed it to not just CO2 but carbon. Well, the policies have been successful, Alex, because if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, the scale of deaths getting rid of carbon, balancing carbon, and almost saying, oh well, that's another pension saved, and if these people don't get to pension age, that means we've saved more money. So when everything becomes a limited company, like everything did after 2008, the courts can't have any losses. They want wins because that's what they're there for. The banks are the same. The councils are the same. The police, the NHS, the ambulance, the prison service, they're all based on profits. So as we've said a few times, if the prison service rehabilitates a customer, he doesn't get caught for any crime, so the police are done without a customer, and we don't, the prison service don't get him back. So all of a sudden, this doesn't sound like good policies for business. So when we treat everything as business, and every man and woman is treated as a Mr., Miss, Mrs., and everybody's operated like that because that's what they've been taught. So when it all comes down to it, we've all been put into this jurisdiction that they pretend applies. And when you go there to say it doesn't and to show it doesn't, all they then do is to spend money in trying to find a way around of shutting you up, getting around, open you make a mistake, open you run out of money. So we see a system that is being run against the people, that is facilitating death of people, where people can make money on insurance policies, and they know all about this. And then the churches and all the religions that are getting involved, we're talking about what kind of fundamentalist Islam is coming over, the ideology. Now they're going to be close to going to war for these Abraham Accords, Alex, because they've got the Muslim Brotherhoods meeting. You've got Muslim leaders meeting with Catholics and everything. But to say that there's any Christians going to be there, it's you're going to see what a Christian actually is, because the Catholics are going to promote, the Roman Catholics are going to go for the no-hide laws, which would then mean that Jesus being God is going to be classed as idolatry. So therefore, Roman Catholicism will not believe that Jesus is God, which will only add to whether you think the big things or little things, where you sit in a box and confess to a bloke who intercedes on your behalf, not scriptural. So we're going to be doing all these non-scriptural things all in the name of God. And these bloodlines are all ploughing for that. And they all believe in demons, and they all believe in witchcraft and all this stuff. What's the opposite to that, Alex? You've got a Bible that says all that's going to go on, all these are liars, all these are false, don't listen to them. And all those people that follow all these religions, the religions say that that book and those manuscripts are wrong, or it's misinterpreted, or it's been corrupted. So there's something got to be wrong with that because it goes against everything. And yet, I'm the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets there but by me. And they all say that's wrong. And they've taught me lies all this time. So if it's not getting a grip of you now, and you're diverted looking at political parties thinking you can vote yourself out of this, you know, you're stuck. You're absolutely stuck, brother.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But in the marketplace now, with all this turmoil, we're in a postmodern world. I asked a slightly different note, but it illustrates the point. I asked this morning, this might sound a bit random, but I've been listening a lot to Kate Bush, right? And I think I played one of her classic iconic songs, this woman's work, and I played it up at the van. And there's a version of it that a lot of people in the States thought was the original by a black guy called Maxwell. He's a soul singer. And he does a decent job singing this song. He's got a voice that's probably higher than Kate Bush's was when she was young. But it's like, for me, it was like a one-string violin. And I started asking AI, like, which was best. And I knew that the stock answer, it was going to have to say, well, yeah, everything's just down to musical taste. So there is no objectively better version. And I managed to argue it into a corner by talking about comparing God to a tuning fork and saying that if there's a vibrational frequency of truth. So what I did, I went beyond Kate Bush and Maxwell because, you know, you might accept that there could be different technical aspects that people appreciated. But then I compared Beethoven with Philip Glass. Philip Glass is a modern classical composer. He's well known for having done some interesting experimental work. But you compare Glass to Beethoven, it's like it had to maintain the same position. Well, it's just a matter of, the aesthetic, the appreciation of beauty is within the person who hears the work. And I said, well, if you ask most people who do they think is better, would it be Beethoven or Philip Glass? Then it had to acknowledge that most people would probably suggest that Beethoven was better than Philip Glass. So you got like the two extreme positions there, where you can't just say something's better because it's popular with everyone, because everyone can be wrong. So consensus doesn't define truth. But you can't also claim that therefore all truth is relative and there is no objective truth. So when I brought it to the tuning fork position, it's like, right, well, what resonates with ultimate truth? Classical music formed on sacred geometry and frequencies. Those things which resonate with that frequency. So, for example, then what I said to the AI was, so if Kate Bush is an angel, let's just say you view her as an angel, and she disclosed that song as a revelation from God, and then somebody like Maxwell comes along and he imitates it, but he strips it of its essential quality that was imbued in it by God using Kate Bush, who becomes like an angelic figure, then you can claim that there is an objectively better position because it's aligned to the tuning fork resonance of God, because he sent it out like as through an angelic messenger. And it just couldn't deny it. And it said, oh, well, that position, you've moved things into the realm of the metaphysical and untestable. But that does scupper postmodernism. You still can't verify. You can't 100% verify, but you don't have to verify who that God is. You just have to acknowledge the principle that if there is some, and again, New Ages call it source energy, but we know God is the creator and therefore the source of all life. So even if people want to talk about source energy, and everything vibrates on that frequency, and God is good, and he creates a good creation, and it's a good order, and things that are good and creative will resonate at that frequency, then imitations might resemble superficially this beautiful thing, but you're expected to strip it of its essential divine ingredients. So I do think it comes down to that. And you can see it's frequency, but it's that spirit and ultimately truth, spirit and truth. You know, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, not just the truth, not just these specific statements that are true, like propositions. It's like there's much more to it than that. It's lived, it's embodied, it's a path, you know, and it's an energy and a frequency and an alignment. So the question is, what are you aligned with? Whose side are you on? Do you believe in beauty? Do you believe in love? Or do you believe in all this negative stuff? Now, that's something that somebody like David Icke has emphasized without taking a specific Christian position and maybe criticizing. He takes a metaphysical position. But the reality is, if there is something beyond what we can see, and I think we can reason, you know, good things and bad things. You know, anybody who thinks migration, illegal, these migrants coming in and taking all the money in the hotels, and if people think that that's a good thing on moral or humanitarian grounds, they're clearly not living in the real world.
Yeah, I agree. Well, like I said, this has got to now come down to, are people going to wake up to how just how in your face this is actually now. This isn't. It's not being hidden. It's just if you can only see in the compartmentalization of what they taught you, and you can't join those compartments, you can't join these dots, then you know this is where the trouble is. I mean, we're looking at again. We're going over to the States. Taylor may be able to comment on this, but you're going to hear about childhood vaccines, and these are like this should be. This is from the 25th of the 9th, 24. So this isn't even. This is like nearly a year ago, and we've been talking about this a lot longer. That's if I'm starting to have some digital demons.
Okay. Am I to pull from this that none of the vaccines, including the COVID vaccine, has not been properly tested?
Absolutely. Not a single childhood vaccine, I can tell you, has gone through a placebo-controlled clinical trial of sufficient duration and power to assess that it was safe before being injected into millions of children in America. All right. I can say that categorically, not because it's my opinion, but because anybody who goes to the FDA website could see that for themselves by looking at the package insert and the underlying clinical trial documents that are available on the FDA website.
So,
okay. Am I to pull from this?
So, Alex, if we're looking at those are the childhood vaccines, if we're also looking at vaccines that have had SV40 virus in, that we know they inject into lab rats to actually cause tumours so they can find so-called cures. So if they're purposely being put in these vaccines and they're on the inserts, but the doctors either aren't reading them or they're not passing them on to people, I mean, if somebody said to you, Alex, I'm going to inject you with this, it's got this SV40 virus that's going to cause you to have cancer. Are you going to possibly second guess whether you're going to have that done or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know loads of people who just begging to have cancer. It's a modern scourge.
Honestly, I'm struggling to get my head around this because people said that they did their own research. You know, they didn't just follow what the doctors said. They did their own research. But you know, family and friends said that to me, and yet when you were telling them things what were in these injections, it was almost like they couldn't hear it. It wouldn't register. Well, I'm just having it so I can go on holiday. You know, where you? I don't know how you answer that. If you're going to do that just to go on holiday, and then within 3 weeks anybody can go, even if you've not had a jab, you've got to start feeling there's something a little bit strange going on. You might feel a little bit silly, but do we see now another one being pushed, and then those restrictions coming in again, and then getting those same sycophantic people who would report you for having 6 people around your house when you're only meant to have 5. So then you have police coming round. You've got police coming round saying, look, would you remove those posts off Facebook? I'm only here to warn you. It's like, it's all these things that are adding up now. Only Christian street preachers are being arrested for preaching Christ. And there can be a Muslim stand opposite with pamphlets, and they can use loudspeakers, and they don't need it. You've got the Muslim prayers calling people to pray at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's 5-6 times a day. Now you can't do that with anything else. So we've had an absolute shift in acceptance of other things that go against everything that we've ever done. So there's a complete shift in demographics, and there's a complete shift in culture. Now, when that happens, when people start feeling that they're being pushed out and they're not being heard, then it puts themselves into that fight or flight. There's nowhere to go, Alex. They're looking at you're not traveling, never mind flying. So if all that is public policy, which is what we've seen, I mean, look, Andy Bastard's had to take all his signs down for the climate tax things, and that he didn't even want it in the first place, he says now. So you've got all these liars all flip-flopping, and you've got Farage doing the same. You said, well, you can't really sum it up, but the thing is, should we expect Farage to be anything different? He's a banker. He's worked and breathed and ate and drank with these people. And Tommy Robinson's pointing out that who he's sat with, where he's getting his donations from. Are we to say, yeah, but he's going to be different? Can we do that with a good conscience? I don't think we can. I think we've got to be open-minded. We've got to look at what's happened throughout history, and we've got to see now what kind of times that we're in. Everything is being geared to something going on in that Middle East. Israel as a country is being surrounded. Now, you have the people, and I'm putting speech marks, Christians, who are saying, but God will rise up and protect Israel. Now, Israel, that land, as we know, according to Scripture, isn't Israel that land. It's the people. But it's the people who actually believe in Christ. So there's people in Israel that aren't of Christ. So we've got this misunderstanding of things. And then when people are off on the theologies as well, and how many times have we said on this podcast, we want people to come here now and tell us, why do you believe what you believe? Where have you got that information from? We'll tell you why we believe what we believe and where we've got ours from. Let's put it together and see what floats. And if anything goes against the foundation of the Scripture, it's wrong. We have to start drawing these conversations, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, you can discern or try and discern where you think the problems are. But one of the big problems is in the universities, because I remember when I did my master's in theology, I was studying quite a bit of feminist theory, critical theories generally, and I remember looking at something, and it's called perspectivalism, which is connected to postmodernism. What it basically says, just to account for this situation with Christians not being able to openly pray, and Muslims, for example, being promoted in praying on handing out tracts or whatever in the same area. The perspectivalism developed a theory that said there's been oppression. So what you've got to remember is these are ideologically entrenched positions supported by universities and academic research. Well, we say academic research in inverted commas. That's very skewed, and that suggests, and this is what you're seeing in Starmer Karma, it's basically reparations, You saw them first doing that in South Africa after apartheid. They started playing around with it, and the basic idea was, and actually, to be honest, it's not completely invalid. It's just become extreme. If, like, for example, if you had a group of 10 people having a discussion in a room, and 7 of them are really quiet and timid, and 3 of them are very vocal. Now, we've all been on training where you've got one loudmouth. You're trying to get through the training, and this loudmouth is just contentious, and the other 20 people have to put up with that person butting in all the time. Well, similarly, if you had 10 people, and it was a plenary session, and 3 of them were hogging it all, the idea would be in perspectivalism that the vantage point of the silence is more important to hear than the concept of equality. Because the 3 who are so vociferous and have got the confidence are hogging the show. Therefore, you've got to shut them up because they're hogging the show. They've dominated the space for a particular period of time in the seminar, say, or whatever. But what they're saying is historically, certain dominant voices, including Christendom's Christian theological voice, has dominated the space for so long that we now need to allow other voices to speak. So that happened with feminism, and then the feminists were challenged by the womanists who were black feminist theologians who said that, well, a lot of these white feminists were privileged middle-class Western women who had access to university education, and a lot of the, especially black African positions, said, well, we need womanist, not feminist theologies where people are able to tell stories from their cultural roots that have not been infected by privilege. And it's not just about money or university education. There's an element of merit in this idea of silencing the dominant voices for a time, so that the less confident people should be encouraged to speak. And we see it sometimes in a little program, Paul.
Yeah.
So when we've got positions theologically, we understand scripture well. There are people there with learning disabilities who don't understand at a very high cognitive level. So we have to have the discipline to say at times, we'll hold back and we'll let other people answer the questions, and we might not chip in at all or chip in at the end, because otherwise it sets the dynamic, and those people who lack confidence will be around those who have confidence and always speak, and it will intimidate them from speaking. So I think I made the case to suggest that it's well attested that there's an element of truth in perspectivalism, that there is a case sometimes, not for gagging people in the sense of cancelling, but what's coming is this idea of social justice, which is trying to correct, it's trying to apply an extra weighting so that the voices that weren't heard can now be heard. Unfortunately, that has been done very cack-handed way. It's infected the university departments, and on a policy level, it's just been applied carte blanche, shut the Christians down and empower the other voices. And unfortunately, that isn't balanced. It's going to an opposite extreme.
Yeah, and I think what the mainstream media is doing well, whilst plugging along with what the government want to put out. If you look at the BBC, their reporting is so vague at times, where you're lucky if you find some reporter that actually tells the truth. Dinny mentioned in the chat room earlier that there was a priest who got bottled in church this morning. Some bloke just walked in the church, hit him with a bottle, left him bleeding. Now, Dinny, when I posted the article, they were asking for information. Nobody had been arrested. Now somebody's been arrested, but there's no description, there's no name, there's no nothing, Alex. So do you think if it had been like Paddy O'Rourke, a white fella from round the corner who's an alcoholic, and he's walked in and smashed him in the face drunk, do you think we'd have known about it by now? And the media seem to do this more regular than they don't. So when it's, like the little girls in Southport, that was a Welsh choir boy that won that at one point. So it looks like this is purpose.
Yeah. Well, clearly, and you can see it's that same ideology that I was talking about has gone into overdrive and said we've got to try and protect the interests of the marginalised voices, and therefore we mustn't allow anyone to claim that it's this ethnicity, this religion, which is associated with this, because that will further shut them down and blame. So it's like this idea, where people say Islam is a religion of peace. Well, it isn't. And it clearly isn't from what Muhammad says in the Quran. A lot of Muslims are peaceful people in their communities. That's not the same thing.
Yes.
So the problem is, as soon as you say anything that tries to investigate the underlying roots of that religion, it's considered to be Islamophobic. Or if you try and say the same, if you say anything against the nation state of Israel, we all know that you're anti-Semitic, even though it's got nothing to do with it. So they shut down any analysis that might reveal truth because they petrify.
You've just hit it there, because when we talk about anti-Semitic, right? So everybody's taught how anti-Semitic Hitler and the Nazis were. They were totally anti-Semitic. Now, when we talk about Semitic, we're talking about Arabs, we're talking about Middle Eastern, we're talking about Europe here. So how is people being anti-Semitic against Jews who aren't Semitic? These are not Jews that were in and around Jerusalem at the time of Christ. These are different ethnicities. Are more than likely, these are all Khazarian type Jews. This is what we know from our history, that the Khazarians could have chosen Islam or Judaism, and they decided to go to Judaism. And we've seen all those acts and actions coming through Europe, where we see these people in Europe who call themselves Jews being kicked out of countries left, right, and centre. There's been a few brave people who've made speeches in the past and said, well, what is it that these people do to these countries for it to always be them? Why is it always them? So we've got ideologies here that are using the same kind of tactics. And as you said, we know many Muslims who are wonderful, lovely, peaceful people, loving people, will go out of their way to help people. And that includes us Christians. They believe it's all about being love and peace. They try and convert me to Islam, and then I try and convert them to Christianity. But those Muslims don't agree with parts of the Quran and the Hadiths that the fundamentalists do. Things that they say, well, that part of Sharia law or that part we don't want. And that's why they left that culture, because they believe it's a cultural thing. The problem that I've got is when you speak to imams and people who are more leaning to the fundamentalists, meaning everything, because the word of Allah does say, if you take only parts of this, you've left Islam. So this is going to put a lot of people who are very comfortable in the religion, very 100% believe in Allah and Islam, and it's going to rock them. And it would have rocked me, Alex, had it happened with Christianity in the Bible. If I'd have opened the Bible and read some stuff that I've read in the Quran and stuff that I've read in the Talmud, if I saw that in the Word of God, then I'd go, well, I don't know if this is the Word of God, because it doesn't talk about hurting people, it doesn't talk about damaging things like this. And then we get pointed out, well, look at all those people that were ordered to be wiped out. There's a context behind that, because those people were in rebellion. They purposely went with these fallen angels. They purposely sought all this. They decided to leave God behind, and the judgment must come. It's not just all about punishment. I mean, how many times do you keep poking a bird before the bird jumps and says, that's it, you've had loads of chances. You can't be sorted, you can't come back. We did it in the Bible study the other week about Sodom and Gomorrah. If there's 40 righteous, I won't destroy it. If there's 30, if there's 20, if there's 10 in the city, if there's 10 people in the city, Abraham, I won't destroy it. Right, I'm off to destroy it, because there isn't even 10 people who have that. And this is why we're warned about hooking ourselves to those fallen societies. I mean, it's interesting when you think about Lot, Alex, because Lot and his family kind of had very good interests, and we talked about Lot being promoted to a position on the gate when he's not even one of their own. So he'd actually bought into that system at some point, yet he stayed on the outskirts. So he was almost dancing in between the two, yet he still knew that those angels were coming for judgment. He still tried to divert them from going into the city. He still tried to save them when they all came to his house for it. So it's very strange when you've got somebody like Lot who looks like he's trying to keep both happy, if you know what I mean. He's dividing the house, and I think that caused him the stress. And then you obviously see it where Lot's wife turns back and looks because she's going to miss that society they found something off because they were accepted as one of their own. So we see an acceptance. We see where Balaam had tricked the Israelites into cursing themselves, and God needs to look, they've been tricked, so they need to be told. If they're told and they still can't hear, they'll be told again. You know, we see it so many times, Paul. Noah preached 120 years, built a boat in somewhere that it never rained, and they didn't care until it started raining. So we're warned about this all the time, and the signs and the times are here. As I say, we're seeing children sacrificed through vaccinations and abortions. We're seeing that being battled, but they've had all this energy that has been promoting all this stuff. You know, I think we can see that the sacrificial energy of humans to the dark energies, that's going to have some power, whether we like it or not. That's going to have some power. It's just that the blood of Christ just reset everything, and now we've got a set of people who believe that they can still do something in this world. Don't get me wrong. I think, you know, they're persecuting Christians all over the world at the minute. They're starting with it in the countries where you thought it'd never happen. Like this, people keep saying this is a Christian country. Well, we're going to have to see it, mate. We're going to have to see these Christians stand up. Are you a Christian that's going to say, yeah, we can go along with these Noahide laws? Because you don't actually know that Jesus is or was God. You think he was a God. You think he was a thoroughly good, bloody good, nice bloke. You've got to know the truth. And if you don't know the truth, I don't know what you can say, because if I'm stood before the throne of judgment and somebody says, well, you knew about this, didn't you? Yeah, well, I was told. Well, why didn't you look into it? Oh, I don't know. Well, what kind of an answer is this? So we're relying on men to tell us things, and then, well, what do I need to do? Oh, just do that. In fact, you can just send a donation and I'll pray for you. You sound then. As long as you said the sinner's prayer, have you said that? Oh, yeah, I said it last night. Well, there you go, you're saved. That is very dangerous, because, as we know, there's a specific thing that comes with being saved, and it bloody changes your life, man.
Yeah, well, another thing I'd say, this might seem a bit like off piece, but I don't think it is. If you think about the West and the rise of the West from 1492 and Vasco da Gama, basically. Prior to that, the Chinese were a much more advanced civilization than we were, and they had printing press like 400 or 500 years before us with moving parts. They'd invented and developed gunpowder, but they just used it in fireworks, and they wanted to trade. And when they met most people, you know, when they were, you know, traversing the seas, they just didn't bother with them, because they weren't advanced enough to be able to trade anything useful with them. So we just, I will not bother. Now, when the West got a hold of gunpowder, they began to develop it in order to be destructive. So not for pretty fireworks and firework displays that you know added some beauty and awe. It was like, hey, we can use this, and suddenly military capacity started to outstrip, and then conquering became more prevalent and prominent. So from around 1500, then we started to outstrip in the West. So if you look at what's happening with the Western world now, you're dealing with ultimately at least the decline, if not the demise, if you take the spiritual aspect out of it, the return of Christ just on historical analysis. It's certainly waning, and there's a decadence, a degradation, and ultimately could be the demise of Western civilization. Certainly now, the Eastern perspective is going back up with China, in particular India. So, interestingly, the West, which obviously has an interesting relationship with Christianity through Roman roots and Byzantium in particular. So, very interesting how that contrasts with the East, like the Middle East as well. So, when Christianity moved away from the ancient Near East and started to expand into Europe, it kind of entered into this relationship with the European culture, and particularly after 1500, the Western culture took a different direction, became more dominant. But Christianity, as a result of piggybacking on the back of that, and we can look at the harlot and the beast in Revelation 13, we see like little signatures and overtures. It started to move more and more away from its original cultural roots in the ancient Near East. Now, whether it be in the Far East, the Chinese, they've probably retained a better connectivity to the originating culture. If you look at the Middle East and the ancient Near East, where the Muslims are and the Jews, they've still retained more of the cultural foundations that we moved away from. So, in a sense, what I would say is if you could get rid of the negative connotations and a lot of the theology that you find in Islam, which basically is moving back to a unitary conception of God, and you could have the Christian theology in place, I probably would take a lot of the cultural practices, like in terms of how they manage family, how a Muslim mentality from that culture might organize churches to be more loving and community orientated. I do think that there are many things within that culture that the West moved away from that we probably need to retrieve. We need to get them back. The Chinese, again, they were intrinsically peaceable. They were advanced. They wanted to trade. They wanted to develop. They didn't want to fight, kill, and destroy. So the West has got quite a lot of that conquest in it. So when we look at the unacceptable face of radical Islam and we see that, oh, that's all violence, the problem with that is the violence is linked to the theology itself. The violence is linked to the idea of God, what God is like, what God commands. That's what makes it dangerous. You've got that decoupled in Western culture. We've still got the violence that came in from when we started to outstrip China from after Vasco da Gama. But we don't have that connected because of the separation of church and state. So in a sense, it's less dangerous. But if we could take some of the cultural stuff that's been retained by Jews, Muslims, Chinese people, basically the various Easts, and we could re-inject Christian theology back into that cultural setting, it would be a lot better. So it's like we've got the worst of certain aspects of the cultural bit with our individualism, which has eroded family, eroded culture, eroded community, eroded the bonds between people, put us in the superficial world that we're living in now, which has culminated with the whole internet thing going to extremes. So we're living in a kind of a simulation now. That's the logical endpoint, logical trajectory where we've gone too far. If we could be grounded again in cultural foundations which we lost, but retain the centrality of Jesus' message of love your enemies and love your neighbours, and that would be a much better configuration.
Let me add this. The whole point of a religion, whether you want to abide by it or not, the whole point of organized religion in the literal sense really is just to, in the physical sense at least, is to maintain good law and order and a good moral foundation for society. That's why they want to get rid of Christianity. and religions in general. They want to, they wanted to, because a population without a foundation is corruptible, is easily corruptible. If you don't worship God, you're going to worship the state.
Well, the religion they want to bring in is the wrong God, and most religions are very compatible with the Abraham Accords. There's only Christianity that goes against it. So it's true Christianity that's being whittled out here, Taylor. It's people who follow the actual word of God. So if me and Alex believe that the word became flesh, Jesus was God in flesh, and that goes against the Abraham Accords that most religions, what you're talking about, will agree on. And those religions will call themselves Christians.
Okay, fair enough. I'm
so
not.
what have we got for mate?
Okay, well, we got some.
You know, you even had an introduction tonight. Blacksister, U.S. correspondent.
Yes, the U.S. correspondent that gives out all the good, juicy political and economic stuff that's that's been going on. Man, we got.
Well, go on then. What's the juicy stuff that everybody in the chat room is going to disagree with you on, mate?
Well, first of all, it's hilarious. We got people like Letitia James and Chuck Schumer who are being done in for mortgage fraud, and these are high-ranking Democrat officials, and it's absolutely hilarious because you have the controlled left, the CNNs and all that stuff that are going on about how this is Trump attacking his political enemies, always attacking PBS and his political enemies and all that crap. And it's funny too because people are seeing through that more and more and more. Even your average normie on YouTube is seeing through that, and it's pretty damn awesome because the more hardcore the left becomes overtly, the more people see through the BS, which is good. It's exactly what we want. So there's that. Now, I want to. I do have a couple articles I want to read from because it's. Oh, what happened to Webby?
He may have been booted. Continue.
Okay. Oh crap! You can't share. That's right, because you're not the host. But yes. So right now we have this right here. Let's see. You guys can't see it because it's not on the screen, but I'm going to read it from here. Mark Sykes and Francis Georges Picot, Arthur Balfour. New York Times: the 109-year-old pact that looms over European moves to recognize a Palestinian state. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was a secret treaty Britain and France signed more than a century ago. Many consider that to have been a legacy of strife in the Middle East. To have seeded a legacy of strife in the Middle East. And this is something that a lot of people don't know. Like, if you look at any normie historian that, the academic ass clowns that read from Wikipedia and such, they talk about World War I. They don't know about these things. They don't know about the Sykes-Picot Agreement or the Balfour Declaration. And if they do, they'll barely briefly mention it. Just to throw the straw man out there. Oh, I acknowledged it. It's not like I didn't talk about it. I acknowledged it. I just relegated it to the back pages. It's a common fallacy technique they use. But anyway, the scriptwriters at Whiteout Productions are once again taking up the sort of controversial historical topics which in the past were generally only discussed by lonely voices such as the editorial board of the anti-New York Times. It was not intended for consumers of fake news to understand the post-World War I historical injustices, which were the Sykes-Picot Agreement, named after the respective diplomats of the UK and France, and the Zionist Balfour Declaration, named after UK Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour. Both of those World War I dirty deeds were hatched in secret and not known to the betrayed Arabs until after the war had ended. Ever since that time, only Arabs and us quote-unquote anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists continued to speak about those betrayals as betrayals. But now, both the British government, quote, Q, and the French government, Q, want to right past wrongs and are invoking these old deals by name. Oh, how times have changed. An excerpt from the New York Times article. I'm sure you've heard about that. How Britain and France have very recently brought that up again, the Balfour Declaration and the Sykes-Picot Agreement.
I think, I missed most of what you've been saying, to be fair, Taylor, because I got booted. I've just added what you're reading from now, so I know you don't go over it again, but just join a couple of dots for me there in case I need to know.
Oh, just talking about how people have the majority of the public have not known about the Sykes-Picot agreements, named after the diplomats of UK and France, and then the Balfour Declaration. People didn't know about that, even especially normie historians. That if they talk about when they go over World War I, they very briefly mention this, if at all. And now the British government and the French government recently have come out and openly acknowledged these and are quote unquote trying to right past wrongs. Continuing, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, the treaty between Britain and France in 1916, under which the European colonial powers carved up the Levantine territories of the crumbling Ottoman Empire into spheres of British and French control. Speaking at the United Nations, the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy cited another century-old document arguing that recognition would readdress a historical injustice, the Balfour Declaration, issued a year after the signing of Sykes-Picot, which endorsed the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. It had a proviso that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. End quote. To better understand and appreciate that significance, the great significance here, let's fire up the time machine and revisit the historical context surrounding that pair of conspiratorial schemes which laid the foundation for a century of humiliation and bloodshed to come. Editor's note: though not mentioned in this article, the hidden motive behind the Balfour obscenity was for the Zionists to obtain immigration access to Ottoman Arab Palestine as a payoff for finally getting the United States into the war on the side of Britain. And that was essentially what the Balfour Declaration stated, issued to Lord Walter Rothschild. Sykes-Picot divided up the Arab parts of the Ottoman Empire into British and French spheres of influence and oil. Zionist leader Chaim Weizmann, coached by the Rothschilds, squeezed the British into issuing the Balfour Declaration. American doughboy entrapped on barbed wire and killed. He and 150,000 others died for the dual evils of the New World Order, globalism and Zionism. 1916 and 1918. At war with Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Turkish Empire, the UK and France encouraged the Arabs to rise up against their Ottoman rulers. Anticipating a united and sovereign greater Arab nation out of the deal, the Arabs did exactly that, fighting valiantly for their independence. To this end, a British military intelligence asset named T.E. Lawrence, aka Lawrence of Arabia, was dispatched to assist the Arab revolt. His role in coordinating Arab attacks with British actions proved very valuable to the Arab nationalists who trusted and admired Lawrence. Lawrence himself believed that Arab independence was also in the best interests of Britain, but he knew nothing about neither the secretive Sykes-Picot Agreement nor the Balfour deal promising the Jews a homeland in Palestine. The living legend was being played by his own government, itself in bed with the Zionist Jews. The promises of Arab independence were a lie. Lawrence felt that he had been betrayed as well, simply used to deceive the Arabs. It was a very bitter and shameful disillusionment for him. During the 1930s, Lawrence, it has been asserted by one documentary filmmaker, was drawn to the British fascist movement of Oswald Mosley, an admirer of Hitler. Perhaps the twin betrayals of Sykes-Picot and Balfour helped to set Lawrence on this path. In any event, because he remained a national hero, opposition to another planned world war against Hitler's peaceful Germany would surely have been problematic for the Jewish warmongers of Britain. Conveniently, he was killed in a motorcycle, quote-unquote, accident in May of 1935. So he got George Patton. So you see, Both Sykes-Picot and Balfour were truly history-defining in ways which were bad for the Arabs and good for the Jews. The fact that these dirty deals are actually being revisited in the public discourse constitutes yet another indication that the Zionist mafia power has been broken. Perhaps one day soon, God willing, we'll get some truth about that motorcycle quote-unquote accident which killed Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence's wartime exploits on behalf of Arab nationalism made him a hero to Arabs and Englishmen alike, but he had no idea that both he and his Arab friends were being played for fools. With another world war approaching in 1935, he was too big of a name to have going pro-Hitler. And we have this right here. This is becoming mainstream. Lawrence of Arabia may have been murdered by British intelligence's crash site by the Daily Mirror. So this is a thing that's been very, very common throughout history. Whenever the globalists / the Zionists, the Rothschild cabal, whenever they want to use nationalist fervor in order to get what they want, what they do is they will instigate people and tell them if you rise up, you'll get a country of your own. In breakout of some big empire. This happened with Panama. That's how the puppet state of Panama was created. That's how Belgium was created. That's how it's another good example. That's how what's that? What's that one country? I forget. But yeah, so basically these anti-nationalists, these hardcore globalists, they'll use nationalist fervor to get what they want. And then once to weaken a giant empire, like say the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Turkish Empire, and then once they've gotten what they wanted, they throw those people under the bus. That's what they did to Japan as well after they built them up for half a century, starting in the 1850s, all the way up until the Russo-Japanese War, bought and paid for by Jacob Schiff, another Rothschild agent. After that, and after World War I, they abandoned Japan and just said, "Oh, we don't need you anymore because Russia's out of the way now." And then they turned against Japan when Japan realized that they got the short end of the stick and they got used and played like for fools. And then obviously we had World War II. So this is a long history of these people playing nationalists against each other for the sake of dividing and conquering. And thankfully, this is now coming out public that about these dirty deals, because once those are publicly acknowledged, it's going to hurt obviously Israel is already in the tank, is already in the pits when it comes to its approval rating. But now people are learning, hey, maybe even its origin story isn't exactly legitimate. Maybe we should rethink things. Hopefully the Holocaust narrative will be next.
That's ambitious, Taylor.
Hey, if you're gonna go, you better go all the way. You can't go halfway on these things, otherwise you're just gonna be back where you started eventually.
Well, the cat would be amongst the pigeons if that happened.
Well, sometimes you got to dig through the shit in order to get to the gold that's buried beneath it. And in this case, unfortunately, people are going to have to wise up and realize that they've been played for fools when it comes to these things. And I don't even think it should be that difficult for people to understand. Look at all the children that have been raped and ritualistically sacrificed to these monsters, to these devils. If they had to go through that crap, then the normies should be able to go through just a little bit of truth gems, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I hope that they're not going to coddle to the normies and be like, oh, this is too much for them. They can't handle this. They can't handle learning about the child sex trafficking and the ritualistic murders and the 9/11 and all that stuff. Because, it's only at the precipice that people change.
Well, it's only at the precipice that anybody ever looks up. But most people, including atheists, always call out to God. It just depends on which God that you've been following to call out to. Denny's talking about, he's asking the question, is religion the only way to be saved then? And we keep trying to say every week that the Bible, the scriptures that are in the Bible, go against every religion. There's no two ways about it. So there's a difference there. All these religions say that the scripture is wrong, or they all have different versions of it. So we've got to go off what we can find is the best preserved word of God, and we've got it. So if we stick to that and don't go off making stuff up, we should be okay, shouldn't we, Alex?
Well, you've got to, like I've said many times, people believe in authorized sources. If you look at journalism, people, we laugh when people trust the BBC or CNN. But for a long time they did, until that credibility is finally eroded, where people spot that the claims that are made bear no relationship to reality. And it's the same with religious source documents as well.
Schofield Bible?
Yeah, well, the problem is always the same. Anyone makes a claim that this is the correct set of cognitive propositions to describe ultimate reality. Whether they're right or wrong is one thing. The reception of that and people competing over how to validate and verify that. If you recognize the intrinsic truth of a religious proposition, great. But what if you don't? What if you've been going to a church or had experience in a church, like so in Denny's case, maybe the Roman Catholic Church with all its corrupt practices, and you've seen that claiming to be the truth from God? People reject the faith perspective because of the presentation that the church has made. So the logic is clearly, like we said many times, don't go to a source just because someone says that's the right source. It's the Christian church. It's the Christians themselves. If they're not embodying Jesus Christ, how can anybody see Jesus Christ alive? It's all right claiming he is risen. Well, where is he? He needs to be in the midst of his people. That's the fundamental difference. These other religions don't claim, like, Muslims claim that Jesus didn't die on the cross. And it was substituted, and it was Jesus who took the punishment, Judas that took the punishment. Well, in that case, there's no living resurrected Jesus now. Therefore, Muslims can't make the claim that Jesus should be alive in a Muslim community, demonstrating his presence to the world as a witness. They've only got the legalistic scripts going back to the law of Moses and the other stuff, stating positions as cognitive truths from their religious perspective. The point about Christianity is a living Christ now. So if he's alive now and he is alive in his church, then is the church reflecting that? And then, of course, if people see Christ living and risen in the church, they'll go, hey, well, where did you get that from? The Bible. Then they'll go and read it because they've got a reason to read it. Not, well, the Bible's better than the Quran because I said so. You might be right, but that's no basis in the world which we're living in now, a post-truth world. Well, I believe in the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which is a credible religion. And they wanted religious rights. They call themselves Pastafarians. It's like, it's kind of mockery, but they're mocking something that's completely wrong. The Pastafarians, yeah, it's like Life of Brian. People thought it was attacking Christ. It was attacking the dopiness of Christians. It was just, it's all about repeating those mantras. We've got to do what? Yeah, exactly. What we're told. Repeat it like a parrot. So they're taking the mickey by critiquing it. So realistically, if there's not a witness in the world, faith isn't going to happen. People need to see Christians living how Christ instructed them to live. Otherwise, the church is worse than the other religions.
All right. That being said, though, I do want to move to this next article, and we are this time talking about the wag the dog war in Gaza. Once again, as I've said previously before, from day one, back on October 7th, from day one, I knew this was a false flag. I knew that this was nonsense. Now obviously, it's been reiterated since then. But I knew from day one that whole thing was nothing. It just smelled of of Hollywood theater tricks. But anyway, moving on. New York Times, with fate in his hands, Netanyahu fumbles it. Unyielding posture impedes Gaza talks. Another day, another harsh attack upon Bibi Netanyahu, and the shitty little state plastered on the front page of the historically pro-Zionist / Jewish-owned paper of record. It's been owned by Jews ever since the late 1800s. So 1893 or 1895 or 86, 1896, I forget the exact year. A horrible mendacity factor, which until very recent times had always dutifully downplayed or ignoramulously ignored every Israeli atrocity and lie since 1948. What the heck has happened to the New York Times? I mean, for one, they didn't even report on the U.S.'s Liberty incident. Not even in the back pages, just completely Orwellized it. But anyway, answer Q happened. That's what. From the article, international condemnation of the growing starvation in Gaza, which aid agencies and many foreign governments have largely blamed on Israel's 11-week blockade on the territory between March and May, is at its peak. Partly to protect Israel's responsibility for that situation, several of the country's long-standing allies have recognized a Palestinian state or pledged to do so in the near future. In the United States, most Democratic senators voted last week to block some arms sales to Israel. A Republican lawmaker, Marjorie Taylor Greene, has accused Israel of genocide, an accusation it strongly denies, end quote. Of course, the wag the dog starvation and genocide are, as we have capably demonstrated over and over and over since the fake Hamas raid of October 2023, fake is a low-budget war movie. But the public belief in this scripted drama is how the once hallowed image of the SOS has been strategically downgraded to such a point that even the Schofield Bible Christian Zionist quote-unquote crazies are abandoning the SOS. Indeed, Saving Israel for Last from 2018 is turning out to be the most substantial of all Q posts. And it's really true. Fake AI image of a missile strike in Israel said to have come from Iran. Yet another image of quote-unquote starving, pot-totting crisis actors begging for food in Gaza. Or should we say Gaza in quotes. From the House floor, Q operative / Trump surrogate and MAGA Christian favorite Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, condemns the shitty little state for genocide. The poetic irony of this New York City bastion of Zionist propaganda now being commandeered to churn out actual blood libel against the SLS is singularly satisfying to witness. From the file marked "A Taste of Your Own False Flag Medicine" comes this pair of noble lies included in the same article. Quote, despite Israel's sudden decision to let in more food last week, Palestinians in Gaza are still dying every day from starvation, according to Gaza's health authorities. Good wording right there. Israeli soldiers have continued to shoot and kill civilians trying to access a deeply problematic new food distribution system that forces people to cross Israeli military lines to reach distribution sites, end quote. And it's only going to get worse for the SLS as the movie builds towards the part where Epstein's Maxwell Mossad truth, a story which the Times is also keeping alive and stoked day after day, week after week, starts to drip out. Trust the plan and pass the popcorn. The White Hat Fakery Factory churns out hundreds of such comical AI, fake blood, and crisis actor images. But the fake Netanyahu and the Israeli government have nothing to protest the propaganda barrage because Bibi and friends are already dead or under submission. The only objectives to the play-acted movie are coming from frustrated Israeli citizens and Jews who themselves cannot see that it is their ally, quote-unquote, Trump, and his Q boys who are inflicting this public relations disaster upon the SLS. And just look at how cringy, look how bad these photos are. You can just tell. A lot of them, they use the same damn people for the same pictures with the theatrical dust. Look at that. Dear Lord. And look at this man smiling. Man's smiling, bro. And look at that kid.
Let me interject here, Taylor, because I agree with you that there are many faked media videos and pictures, and I have seen them use the same crisis actors. But let's get it fundamentally. Now, as you just said, Netanyahu's not Netanyahu, so that means whoever's taken Netanyahu out is now playing that script, aren't they?
Yep, that's
Yeah?
the script. Yes.
Okay, so there's a script. So are we saying that there is no atrocities or murder or genocide going on in Gaza?
That's
Are we
right.
saying that that the Hamas hostages aren't real either?
That's right. It's all fake. All of it.
All of it.
All of it.
Do you know what? You would cause a major riot if you stood in this country amongst the Palestinian flag wavers and say that there's nothing happening in Gaza.
Well, you know, you have to take the truthful position. Sometimes you have to take the one that's not very popular, just like I do with Hitler. So, at the end of the day, the truth is truth. It doesn't matter if a billion
but
people.
this is what we're saying. You say it's truth is truth. You read from the same source every week. You say it's truth is truth. Yet there are questions about everything that you are saying. So you stand there and say it's truth, but the questions that come your way, you tend to deflect them. So the stuff about Hitler, I can tell you that I've seen evidence that would sway or certainly lean to the fact that he didn't kill himself. We're relying on too much rubbish to accept the truth as that. There is evidence to show there's questions about that. So to say it's true and that's it, I can't do. I certainly couldn't do that. So even though I find your work interesting in the articles, Mel, we've got to ask questions about this. I mean, what you're basically saying is all of the country, all of my family and friends believe that there are bombs going off in Gaza. Israelis are killing Palestinians. They believe that the Hamas has got hostages and they know that it's bad. So for you to then say, well, it's just all fake, that's a big step for people to say. And then for you to say, well, that's the truth, it doesn't work. That's why I've always said to you, man, I really admire your convictions, Taylor, but you're not articulating why it should be true and everything else should be wrong. Like you know, you get it every week about people saying, "Oh, the Q rubbish in the chat room," and you only have to say, "Well, look at read this." People either will or they won't, Taylor. But you can't say that this is the truth. You can say you take that opinion, but you can't just say that that's the truth. I don't have an opinion when it comes to scripture. I've found the oldest scripture from manuscripts that agree with the oldest manuscripts that show this story that makes absolute sense. And all the liars that taught me stuff say that it's wrong. So there's evidence to show that this is true. And then when you say, well, why is it not true? You get the same kind of answers as to what you're saying. Well, it just is. It's this, that, and the other. This is why we've got to start scrutinizing it more. I mean, Alex, it's like the parable of the virgins, isn't it? Oil in the lamps. It's if you stick to something that is wrong and just because you believe it to be true, well, everybody that's come before me, my mum, my dad, work hard, pay your bills, they believe that to be true, and it just is. So we've got to keep this line of inquiry open to Taylor. But I do admire your conviction, mate.
Well, I mean, it's not like I just say these things without any evidence to back it up. It's just that if you want to go
that's what I'm saying, but neither do we. We don't say things we don't have things to back it up. I mean, if we started a debate about Hitler, it would take us several shows to compile all the evidence, and all we'd still have is evidence. What?
Yeah, that would take a long time. That would take a while.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. So I can present evidence that shows that all these other, I mean, Adolf Eichmann lived in Argentina for years. Mengele. Now, Mengele is also linked with Paperclip. You know, there's American science doctors and biologists who have, in their own testimony, said that they worked with Mengele. So we've got a lot of stuff that's coming out of Germany when the Germans still have that Fourth Reich.
Which one was Mengele again?
Say again.
Which one was Mengele again? I forget. I'm not good with names.
Mengele was the angel of death.
Oh, yeah, all that BS that talks about him. So I mean, so what if they work with him? Okay, so there's only a problem with that if you believe all the propaganda stories that come out saying that he experimented on Jews, the wax heads, all that crap. So at the end of the day, you if you again, you have to be on the right foundations if you want to be able to get to the truth. If you're not on the right foundation, you're just
Taylor, you're on dodgy foundations, mate, because there's actual evidential paperwork from the Nazi archives to show that there were experiments, especially on twins. Whether it was about Jews or not, I'm not bringing that into it. But to dismiss that they didn't do this, looking for this Aryan race, this bloodline, that it's silliness, mate. Honestly, it's silliness.
Well,
to
again,
say
this
that
is
that's
a whole.
bullshit.
Well, again, this is a whole discussion that would be its own show. So let's
And
not.
that's what I mean. But you can't come onto the show and make flippant remarks and put a funny voice on for people who believe that there's other things to this. Mengele went on the rat run. Mengele was linked with through CIA projects. He's been linked with this. Why? Is it because he's this big bad man and they caught him? No. It's because he was doing very good work that they were very interested in, because Nazism didn't get finished with. It just moved house. And you're still under it. You was under it with the Bushes. You was under it with the straight away from Kennedy. And you've still got the same political powers looking for that ultimate power. Now, Trump's come in as this ranger, that's this maverick that's come in, and it looks all legit. But he's also bringing in a lot of stuff that falls in line with the not just the New World Order stuff, but the New World Religion stuff that me and Alex are linking up. Now, without the likes of Hitler and Stalin, none of this would have happened. World War One, get rid of the Tsars, bring in Bolshevism, and that's when all of a sudden you got Jews killing Christians in Russia. But we don't talk about that because we like Uncle Joe and he helped us, don't we? So we've got all this stuff, Taylor, it's packed. It's a powder keg packed. You can't just make remarks like that and say, I'll ignore everything else. Because for one, I know you've got more integrity than that. And I know sometimes you get a little bit overexcited because you have got a massive amount of knowledge. But that amount of knowledge needs careful discernment. So that's all I'd say, mate, is don't make those comments like that because it agitates people. And then when you agitate people, all of a sudden information doesn't get exchanged. You just get to a Mexican standoff. And I know you're better than that because I've heard your stuff from what you do on your own show, pal.
Well, they're just it's it's not like I just go and blanketly say these things. At the end of the day, if you want to have a deep conversation about certain subjects, that requires its own show. What I'm doing simply is just presenting information, and if people want to believe it or not, that's up to them. So at the end of the day,
that's not what you're doing. If you were doing that, that would be fine. But when people have got information that could contradict what you're presenting, you're saying you're presenting the truth. And if other people don't believe that, it doesn't matter. And that's what you can't do that.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I'm saying.
You said the truth is the truth about Mengele being a load of rubbish and all that stuff. Whereas there's information to show that contradicts that is not rubbish. And you said you just present information. Well, you didn't. You presented information and they made a statement. So you've got to back that statement up. And you're saying, yeah, you're right. We have to present evidence. But it's not something that I want to spend shows doing. Me and Alex are now trying to join the dots because of the importance of eternity. It doesn't matter what you believe, Taylor, or Alex, or me. If the word of God is true and it's telling us that this is what's going to happen, and if you aren't in these certain areas with your mind, with your heart, then you're potentially going to be gone forever. And people can't really envisage that right now. Have you got anything to add at this point, Alex? Because we're coming up to, we've just gone past 10 to 10 cowboy time, so we're going to have to start wrapping things up. But I'm not having a pop at you, Taylor, by the way. You know, like I said, I'm an admirer of your work and your conviction, but you're up to scrutiny on here. You know. Go on, sorry, Alex.
It's the jigsaw puzzle pieces again. So discrete pieces of researched information. So, for example, Hitler died in a ditch, discuss. Hitler ended up in Argentina, discuss. So, yeah, you can produce reams of research and essays, but what happens is when people do the research, they do the research, they come to conclusions, then they simplify the research in order to embed that, what they consider to be truth, into their narrative. So it's like when you went to school and you remember when you were, I mean, obviously we call it primary school. It's like, what, fourth grade, fifth grade, I don't know, in America. But ultimately, up until about the age of 11, there you start with your mental arithmetic, and then you get into more complex mathematics. It's still not too complex, but the teacher just doesn't want you to put the answer into the workbook because you could guess and be right. So that doesn't prove that you understand. So you have to show you're working out. And, you know, even a clock that stopped is right twice a day sort of thing. It's the same principle. So the difficulty is when we research, it's not somebody else doing the research. We research it from our unique point of view. We can get confirmation bias. We can end up with wrong conclusions as well as right conclusions. But out of all of those discrete pieces of data, Hitler died in a ditch, yes or no, discourse, we conclude an answer
really
to
like
that.
to bring up Hitler a lot. I just want to
But
say
the
that.
thing, it's just an example, Taylor. So the thing is, ultimately then, if you just reduce the answer to an answer, and which you have to do because you end up with a conclusion, and the conclusion comes from all the research. It's the tip of the iceberg. But then you incorporate that into your story. Then you do it in another area, and you study deeply and you research deeply, and you come to a conclusion about something that you researched. That's the tip of the iceberg again. Then you take all these different iceberg tips, and out of the connectivity between all the iceberg tips, you build a meta picture which connects all your iceberg tips together. What you're doing, let's just say you have 20 iceberg tips. You'll use those 20 to confirm the correctness of the other because it builds a coherent picture. So people move away from the discrete data that they've researched, the conclusions. Hitler died in a ditch, discuss, yes or no. You conclude that he did, if it's part of your narrative. You connect it to other parts of the story we've done your research. Then everybody else just sees the final story. You'll tend to speak from the surface of that story because it becomes a faith conviction. So although it started off researched and you did your diligence, you end up with a picture which you have faith in. It's your story becomes enmeshed with the story you think you discovered about the world. Everybody does that. You've got to have forms of shorthand. It's not possible to retain all the research you've done all through your life in every moment simultaneously in your brain. So that's why we have shorthand. And in our shorthand, we develop an overarching story which helps us to make sense of other stories. So we start to make assumptions. They're true for us because we've done our research, but they aren't necessarily true for other people. It's the same thing that I say about the Bible. If Christians just say the Bible's right and the Quran's wrong, well, on what basis? You have to at least get into the Bible and debate the content of it over against Islamic doctrines in the Quran. That's one way to go. It's not the only way to go, but it's one of the key ways to go to examine the content. So there's a number of ways which you can establish what you consider the truth to be and that you have faith in. But ultimately, from a Christian point of view, that's why I said, the churches represent what they believe to be biblical across many different traditions, and they all seem to say many different things in many respects. So how do you know which one is true? Well, Christianity says it's the living presence of Jesus Christ in his church. And if you don't see that, why would anyone say, yes, you made a claim about the Bible, therefore you're right just because you said so, and the Muslims are wrong? So you can debate the content, which is one way to do it, or you can say there needs to be something more here beyond the story that I've constructed. So I can see both sides of this, but I think Paul is right in just bringing you into check a little bit, Taylor, because it's only the same thing that I'm saying here, that Christians shouldn't claim the Bible's right just because they're Christians. It's like, what is the added truth value that's coming out that makes a difference? If you can make the case for that, then that strengthens your case. But if you just state it as a bold fact, then ultimately what will actually happen is you'll undermine your own credibility, because people say he's dogmatic, he's not prepared to consider other perspectives. The fact that you've done that research won't matter to them, because all it tells us is you come to a considered conclusion, but then you state it as an article of faith, but it's not the faith that other people possess. So you've still got to make the case.
I'll tell you what you have done though, Taylor. You've joined all the dots using the Balfour Declaration and all that, joining the dots, joining Israel to the World War II as to why all this happens. And we know you're very open about your opinions about what happened during World War II. But you having those opinions and that evidence that you produce, it joins dots. It joins dots and it expands. But what it brings more than anything is more and more questions. So, like I said, we appreciate it. We appreciate you giving your time up to come on and bring us your stuff. There's plenty. I've sent you messages through. I get messages about your stuff every so often about how they enjoy, how excited you get about things, and it inspires them to go and look. But again, they ask questions. They've got more and more questions. It's not like Alex said. It's something that we all do. We think, hey, that fits there. We'll stick with that. I'll stick with it. I've done it before myself, and then down the line you go, wow, that did fit, but I can see how this fits better. So then you've got to pull the piece.
Don't call me Alex anymore. Call me Dennis Weaver, like Dorian Gray said.
Oh, you're Dennis Weaver now with the tash, are you?
I'm Dennis Weaver. That's me.
So, what do you see coming for us this week, Taylor?
Who knows? Just I know the script. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. Hopefully, we'll see some more fun stuff. That's all I can say.
So there's nothing happening in the pipeline because I heard that Donald Trump he brokered a peace treaty between Azerbaijan and. Is that all
amazing.
part of the script, or is that a job well done?
That's called that's a job well done. The script part is saying that it was just suddenly done now, but we know this was all done behind the scenes years ago. It's all just a matter of choosing the right time to present it to the public. Just like we know that all of these people have been taken care of for years now. It's all just a matter of play acting the replay for the public. So, at the end of the day, it's a job well done.
Right. Well, I know we've not got time for you to answer this, even if you know him, but me director's spamming the chat room, asking you, do you know who Abraham Traore is?
No, I don't know.
Well, there's your answer then, me. So, do you want to sum up from your perspective, Taylor, for what's going on and what you've read about tonight and what your, not predictions, but what you could see coming next? Just so we can wrap up, pal.
Could I see coming next? I'm hoping that icebreaker happens soon. We can get some of that good juicy stuff revealed about the Epstein stuff. And by the way, just so anyone who is confused, Q already gave us the Epstein list years ago, back in like 2019. So it's not like we don't know the list. I can literally show it on screen for anyone who wants to see it. So, but yeah. At the end of the day, I would just say that what's it called? Just watch the fun. Get the popcorn out. Watch the fun. Don't get too invested into it. At the end of the day, it's all a script. And we're all just here just critiquing the movie and it's not perfect. So at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we don't know what's best because we're not the ones who have the script and we're not the ones who are making all the decisions. So there you go.
Okay, my friend. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your research, pal. I'll send you a link for next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again.
Thank you, Taylor. God bless, mate.
Yeah,
God
bye,
bless,
mate.
guys.
What have you got to say in wrapping up, pal?
Well, I'd like to run a straw poll saying Tash or no Tash. I'd like to get into the real business here, mate.
Well, if you while you're liking, subscribing, and sharing, if you'd like to put in the comments a thumbs up whether Alex sticks to his Tash as Thomas Magnum PI or he gets rid of it.
Or Weaver. I'm Alex Weaver.
Or Dennis Weaver, depending on which. So we go into yet another week, pal, and we're just going to have to see what the script is going to reveal. Rich T's just asked who writes the script. Well, we've all got pens, I suppose, and we all intervene and write our own parts in this play. And we don't always write good parts. Some parts we make a part that isn't there, and we play a role that we shouldn't bother playing. And it comes down to it: do we take time out? Do we allow God to move before we try and make, like Moses did, where he thought he should do something? Abraham did the same. We saw consequences being drawn out from that. It took Moses 40 more years. So maybe we just stop. We don't keep diving in and trying to make things happen. There's enough evil in each day, mate. So we just take each day as it comes, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we underestimate.
Go on, sorry, mate.
I think that we underestimate the scope that we have as human beings under the right influence. So, obviously, from a Christian point of view, Jesus Christ becomes and is central. But I think you've got to go a bit further, because what does that mean when I say Jesus Christ? A lot of people say that as a profanity. So what or who are we calling on exactly? What does it mean? So we use words all the time, but words arguably cast the largest shadows. Words, if they're working well, should reflect the truths that they point to. But what happens when words don't reflect the truths that they're supposed to point to? And then the words become a charade. And then instead of reflecting truth and becoming a vehicle for truth to be disseminated to others, they become the basis of shadows, blank spaces, dark spaces, things that obscure what you're supposed to be able to see. So for me, it's about presence. And like I might have said in some shows in the past, Jesus walked around while he was alive, and he was a presence, and he stood out. People recognized the difference. Now, if Christianity really is Christianity, it's not just a bunch of things that we point to and say, this is more accurate than this. You embody it. Christ's presence in the world is light and salt. So if we have composure, if we're healed, if we're not driven by traumas, if we're not fighting other battles, whether it be childhood traumas or, dramatizing, acting out old pain, old scripts, that's not going to get us anywhere. It's about healing, which we touched on last week. It's not just about sins and corruption and fallenness. That's a part of it. That's what we see. But it's about the remedy. We like that word. Jesus is the remedy.
We do.
He wants us to heal. He wants us to be whole. He wants us to become representatives of himself, walking in this world as light and salt. If that doesn't happen, something's missing. That's the beauty of the gospel. So people have got more scope than they imagine to not get sidetracked, not get deceived, not live in this Groundhog Day that we spoke about at the beginning. It doesn't have to be Groundhog Day every day when you get up. What should I do today? I've got to go to work. This is tedious. What's on the news? Let's live now. Wait for the weekend on my next holiday. There's got to be more to life than that. And Jesus said, I've come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. So that's the bottom line. For all the doom, all the grim stuff that's going on, we know it's all going to get wrapped up with a ribbon on it, like Sodom and Gomorrah, judged, and we'll start again. In the meantime, there are still things that we can do. We can still leave our mark, because if we align with the source of all things, God, in Christ, the Logos, we'll be calm, we'll have a presence in the world, and people will sit up and take notice. So there are many things we can do without having to get sidelined into doom, into negativity. We can, if we're healed, we can present that to the world, and that will impact the world. And that's our best chance. It's a better option than trying to arrange political action. It's about transformation of the inner man. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I'll just add that I agree with you, because we're told that if a man picks up a sword and to fight with the sword, like, this is what they want us to do, is to become violent, to die by that. Because those words would be used against him because of interpretations. So this is why we have been used and why they're being used. This is why I bang on every term Christianity. Dinny was talking about that. He thanked us for the point that we brought up, because we've got to stop calling Christianity religions, because the term
Hey, up. So he's summing it up there. I'm there on the chat. I've seen some final comments, and I'm thinking, well, I suppose I should myself thank everyone for being on the chat tonight. It's been lively, and then he's disappeared, bless him. So, but he was breaking up. I think, well, he sounded like he was breaking up to me. He sounded like a bit tinny. Not Dinny, tinny. So Tinny and Dinny. I think I don't know if Dinny's still on. But yeah, it's been a decent show. So I'll take this opportunity while Paul's not on to thank everybody for coming on. And, you know, while you may not appear on the show, your contributions in the chat are important. And like I've said in the past, we have got to build a community. And you can call it a resistance community, but the thing about the energy of resistance is it brings more resistance. We need to have a more positive vision about why we're coming together. And we're not just coming together to oppose something. We're coming together to create life, to create a life that's worth living. Ultimately, we used to so-called trust our politicians to provide the framework politically, economically, in terms of the legal system, so that we could live in peace and, you know, enjoy our freedoms. And unfortunately, that has been weaponized against us now and completely undermined, and it's being systematically dismantled and destroyed. So obviously that's going to be provoking to our central nervous system. It's worrying what happened since COVID. Everything that they did to us, stopping us going out to the pubs, stopping us congregating, stopping us meeting, forcing us to submit to their regulations, ultimately attacking the economic system, going for digital next. So they are not going to stop doing what they're doing. And we need to develop a counterculture, really. So whether it's bartering, developing stronger links in your community, you've got to build those links now with decent people. It's from the show's perspective, it's Christian faith and the church. If it works properly, it's a good community to be in. But even if you've not got that, if you've got spirituality, if you have a conviction and a belief that you want to build something positive, it's much better than living in Groundhog Day. So, great, Paul. Good to see you back. I've just done a summation. and talked about what I think we can offer positively to the culture, and thanking the chat really for the contributions that they bring every week.
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. It's been every time we put stuff tonight. I've had a bit of a wobble down here with the software, I should say. And then all of a sudden, I'm middle of it just gets booted. So, well, I'd like to reiterate all Alex's sentiments, or Dennis, as I should now, and hopefully with all being well, God willing, we'll see you all next week, and we'll see what other things as this juggernaut moves down the road. See if we're gonna. Thanks to everybody in the chat room. Thanks to everybody who's watching this show after through the week. Please share it. Please subscribe. See if we can shake a few foundations. Everybody.
Are we still live?
Yeah, I can't shut it. Might be loads of trouble ahead, mate.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's like having a drink after hours. Pub's supposed to be closed. We're having a lock-in, so everyone's going to have to go now and get a pint or put a kettle on, get ourselves a brew. Looks like we can't terminate the show.
Well, that means it'll running. I'm going to have to.
Oh, he's gone again. He's gone again. I don't know if he's going to come back this time. Thing is, what we normally do afterwards, me and Webby, we have this discussion after the show where we talk about what we really think about you. No, we don't really. But we do have a chat. We usually catch up on what the week has brought. But yeah, he seems to have decided he's gonna hide behind his tech gremlins. I think he just wanted to get off early or something. But yeah, anyway, it's we'll give him another minute to get back, and then he can terminate us with his tinny voice again. Hopefully, when he boots back in, hopefully then he'll have better functionality and he can end it then. I'm just going to pop up if I can. Even my own text playing up. I can't get back to the comments. I don't know what you're all saying. But yeah, I don't even know how many people have tuned in tonight. Our numbers have been going down, interestingly. Something that we talk about. Since we moved more to a faith-based perspective, we've numbers used to be between 400 and 500, and now they're probably about 200. And we can't make our mind up whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably somewhere in between. It looks like we're carrying on. Claire says we're carrying on. It looks like we are until he comes back, unless he doesn't. It looks like I've been monologuing. But yeah, so we were looking at this. I think when he went on the Vogue show last year, was it last year? Was it earlier this year? I'm losing track. But there was well over 1,000 views then. But we were regularly clocking about 500, and now we're down to about 200. So obviously there's been a slight change of emphasis. We've not heard the gas is free jingle for a long time, even though we come back periodically and talk about bills of exchange. It's a little bit of a mixed bag of everything, and try and cover all the bases. It's not always perfect, but hey, just hang on, I'll get me beer. Yeah. I've got to have the comments on the chat though. I don't know if he's coming back. I think he might, but maybe he's had enough. maybe his computer's completely packed in. He's had to restart it. He might be assuming that I've gone. But yeah, so but if any other comments on, it's very strange, like because my laptop's not working. I'm looking into a phone screen. I can see myself. It's really strange having a conversation with yourself while you're talking to other people. So at least with me having the comments on, I can see a few things that you're all saying. But now the chat seems to have gone a bit quiet. We need a nobbler from Eton to teach the bills of exchange. A nobbler? Don't know what you mean by a nobbler. That's interesting. But yeah, the bills of exchange. What's the name of that guy who used to be on the UK column? Alex something or other. I think Paul's had him on the show. He knows a lot about the bills of exchange. So yeah, it could be quite interesting to get some well-to-do person who's got privilege to come on and explain it. Maybe Webby could get this guy to come back on. But I don't know now because he's gone off. I don't know if he can actually terminate the show, like because I don't have control over that.
I can't turn it off.
You can't terminate the show.
I can't turn it off unless I can be on. It'll just keep running.
I'm gonna say, right, yeah. So this is like it's a fateful moment, Paul. It's like we've got a captive audience now. You thought it was going to end 10 minutes ago. Claire said, "I'll just hang on. I'll get me beer." This is like an after show, isn't it? It's like people have been invited after the concert behind the stage to have a conversation with the singers of the band.
Well, I just can't believe it, mate. With the trouble I've had here. Again, you were here through the week, Alex. But I've no issues with this PC. As soon as we sit down to do this show, I've been booted off 3 times tonight. That's the first time in ages. We must be ruffling some feathers, mate. Must be ruffling some feathers. Anyway, I'm going to try and go again, guys and girls. Hopefully see you next week. Or maybe
if it's successful, have a good week, everyone. If not, I might be monologuing again.
Maybe I'll be back. Maybe I won't. God bless.
All right.